My name is Abigail, and I'm 34 years old. Right now, I'm driving home from what was supposed to be my birthday dinner at my mother's house, and my hands are still shaking on the steering wheel. You know that feeling when something so small becomes the final straw? For me, it was a half-eaten chocolate cake, 3 layers of my favorite dessert already cut into candles, blown-out celebration finished. Without me. Before I share what happened that night, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible at your own birthday celebration? If you're watching from anywhere in the world, please share your story in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever felt overlooked by your own family. And subscribe for more real life stories about finding your worth. Growing up as the middle child in the Harrison family was like being a supporting actor in everyone else's success story. My mother, Patricia, prided herself on running what she called a perfect American household in suburban Connecticut. She was the kind of woman who color coordinated her kitchen towels with the seasons and sent out Christmas cards every year featuring our supposedly happy family. In those photos, you could always find me slightly out of focus, standing between my older sister Emma and younger brother Jason. Emma was the golden child before the term even became popular. She graduated from Yale Law at 25, made partner at 32, and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about her six-figure salary. She had our mother's sharp cheekbones and our father's strategic mind, though Dad had passed away when I was 12. Emma stepped into his role as the family achiever, and Mom worshipped her for it. Jason, 10 years younger than me, was the baby who could do no wrong. When he dropped out of college to start his first business, Mom called him brave. When that business failed, she called it a learning experience. When he succeeded with his third venture at 28, she threw him a party that cost more than my annual teaching salary. And then there was me, Abigail, the teacher, the one who chose to work with 7-year-olds instead of pursuing what Mom called a real career. I loved my job at Riverside Elementary, loved watching kids learn to read, loved their excitement when they finally understood multiplication. But in the Harrison family hierarchy, teaching was equivalent to admitting you couldn't do anything better. The pattern started early. My 16th birthday fell on the same day as Emma's mock trial competition. Guess which event the family attended? Mom had promised we'd celebrate later, but later turned into a cake from the grocery store 3 days after eaten quietly, while Emma displayed her new trophy. For my 21st birthday, they simply forgot. I sat in my college dorm room checking my phone every 5 minutes, sure there must be some mistake. It wasn't until I called Mom at 9 that night that she gasped and said she'd been so busy with Jason's middle school science fair project. He was 11 and apparently needed 3 adults to help him build a volcano. My 30th birthday was the crown jewel of disappointments. Mom decided to combine my birthday dinner with Jason's MBA graduation party. I sat at a table decorated with his school colors, eating a cake that said, "Congratulations, Jason, with happy birthday." Abigail squeezed in small letters at the bottom. When I suggested we might sing happy birthday, Emma laughed and said we weren't children anymore. The family group chat told its own story. Emma would post about her court victories and receive 50 messages of congratulations. Jason would share his business milestones to similar fanfare. When I posted about my Teacher of the Year nomination, I got 3 thumbs-up reactions. When I actually won, Mom's only response was to ask if it came with a pay raise. Holiday dinners were choreographed productions where everyone had their assigned role. Emma would sit at Mom's right hand, the spot of honor, discussing current events and politics. Jason commanded the other end of the table, entertaining everyone with his entrepreneurial adventures. I would be somewhere in the middle, usually next to whatever distant relative or family friend needed a conversation partner. Mom had this phrase she loved to repeat, especially when other people were around. "All my children are equal in my eyes," she'd say, usually while describing Emma's latest achievement in exhaustive detail. She'd been saying it so long that I think she actually believed it. The truth lived in the details, though, in the way she'd introduce us to her friends. "This is Emma, my lawyer. This is Jason, my entrepreneur. And this is Abigail, she teaches elementary school." That dismissive little, "she carried so much weight. She teaches elementary school." Like it was something I'd fallen into rather than chosen. Like it was a placeholder until I found my real purpose. Never mind that I had a master's degree in education, that I'd won teaching awards that parents specifically requested me for their children. In Mom's world, success was measured in salary figures and office views, not in the number of children who learned to love reading in my classroom. The family photo albums were another testament to the hierarchy. Emma's law school graduation took up 20 pages. Jason's various business launches each had their own dedicated sections. My college graduation was covered in 3 pages, and one of those was accidentally a duplicate. In group photos, I was consistently on the edge, easy to crop out if needed. Sometimes I was cut off entirely, just a shoulder or half a face, making it into the frame. I tried to talk to Mom about it once, carefully, tentatively. She was horrified that I could even suggest favoritism. "I love all my children equally," she insisted, then spent the next 20 minutes telling me how Emma had just argued a case in front of the state Supreme Court. When I pointed out the irony, she accused me of being jealous and petty. 2 weeks before my 34th birthday, my phone rang at exactly 7 in the evening. Mom always called at 7 right after her evening glass of wine, but before her shows started. Her voice carried an unusual excitement that made me sit up straighter on my couch. "Darling," she said, and already that was different because she usually just launched into whatever she needed to say. "I want to plan something special for your birthday this year. A proper family dinner. Just the 4 of us." I held the phone away from my ear and stared at it, wondering if I was having an auditory hallucination. Mom planning something special for my birthday was like finding a unicorn in your backyard. Possible theoretically, but highly unlikely. "That sounds nice, Mom," I managed to say, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. "I've been thinking," she continued, and her voice took on that reflective quality that came with her third glass of wine. "I'm getting older, Abigail. 72 next month. And I realize I haven't always been the mother you needed me to be." My heart actually skipped a beat. Was this happening? Was Patricia Harrison actually acknowledging what I'd felt for 34 years? "So I want to make this birthday special for you," she said. "Your favorite dinner, that chocolate cake from the Belgian bakery you love. Just family, no distractions." I found myself nodding even though she couldn't see me. "That would be wonderful, Mom. Thank you." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe people could change. Maybe Mom was finally seeing me, really seeing me, not just as the middle child who became a teacher, but as Abigail, her daughter, who deserved to be celebrated. I called Maria, my colleague and closest friend, immediately. "You're not going to believe this," I said, and told her about the conversation. Maria was silent for a long moment. "And you believe her?" she finally asked. "Why wouldn't I?" She sounded sincere. She even admitted she hasn't been the mother I needed. Maria sighed, and I could picture her in her apartment, probably grading papers with her cat in her lap. "Honey, I love you, but this is what your family does. They give you just enough hope to keep you coming back, then they disappoint you again." "This time feels different," I insisted. "She's getting older. People change when they face their mortality." "Just be careful," Maria said. "Don't get your hopes up too high." But I did get my hopes up. I went shopping that weekend and bought a new dress, emerald green, because Mom had once, years ago, mentioned that green brought out my eyes. It cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but this was going to be special. This was going to be the birthday that changed everything. I got my hair professionally styled the day before something I only did for weddings and special events. The hairdresser gave me soft waves that made me look like I'd stepped out of a magazine. I even bought new shoes, sensible heels, that wouldn't leave me towering over Mom, but would make me feel elegant and put together. Throughout the 2 weeks, I texted Mom to confirm details. Each time she responded enthusiastically. "Everything will be perfect, sweetheart. I'm taking care of all the details. Your siblings are confirmed." 7 o'clock sharp. I called Emma, something I rarely did. She picked up on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Hey, Abigail, what's up?" I could hear typing in the background. "Just wanted to confirm you're coming to dinner on Saturday. For my birthday." The typing stopped. "Oh, right, Mom's thing." "Yeah, I'll be there. Listen, I have to go." "Depositions." She hung up before I could say anything else, but at least she'd confirmed. That was more than I usually got from her. Jason was easier. He answered with his usual charm. "Abs." "Of course I'll be there, wouldn't miss it. Mom's making your favorite, right, that chicken marsala thing." "Chicken piccata," I corrected. "But yes, right. See you Saturday, sis." The week before the dinner, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I was excited about my birthday. I caught myself humming at work, something my students noticed immediately. "Miss Harrison, you seem really happy," one of my second graders, Lucy, said during reading time. "I have a special celebration coming up," I told her, and her face lit up. "Is it your birthday?" she asked, and when I nodded, she clapped her hands. Birthdays are the best. Everyone makes you feel special. From the mouths of babes, I thought, ruffling her hair gently. Maria and I had lunch that Thursday, and she could see the anticipation on my face. "You really think this is going to be different?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I do," I said. Mom even called me yesterday to make sure I didn't have any dietary restrictions she'd forgotten about. Maria raised an eyebrow. "That does sound unusually thoughtful." "See, people can change. Families can heal." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I hope you're right. I really do. But just remember, if it doesn't go the way you hope, you have people who really see you and value you. Your students, your colleagues, me." "I know," I said, squeezing back. "But they're still my family. Despite everything, I love them. And maybe finally they're ready to love me back the way I need them to." The night before the dinner, I could barely sleep. I kept imagining how it would go. Mom would probably cry a little, apologizing for all the missed birthdays and overlooked achievements. Emma might actually ask about my teaching, maybe even express pride in what I did. Jason would tell his funny stories, but also make space for mine. We'd take a family photo where I was in the center for once, where no one could crop me out. I even practiced what I'd say when they sang happy birthday. I'd thank them for making this day special, for finally seeing me. I'd tell them how much their recognition meant, how long I'd waited for this moment. I'd be gracious and forgiving because that's what families did. They forgave each other and moved forward. Friday night, I laid out my outfit like I was preparing for a first date. The green dress hung on my closet door, the shoes lined up perfectly beneath it. I'd even bought a new purse to match something adult and sophisticated that Emma might approve of. I wrapped the presents I'd bought for them because, yes, I'd bought presents for my family to give them at my own birthday dinner. It was something I'd started doing years ago, a way to ensure there was gift giving, even if I was the only one giving. For Mom, a beautiful scarf from her favorite boutique. For Emma, a first edition of a legal thriller she'd mentioned wanting. For Jason, an expensive business card holder engraved with his initials. As I wrapped each gift, I told myself this would be the last time I'd need to do this. After tonight, things would be different. After tonight, I'd be a full member of the Harrison family, not just an afterthought or an obligation. Saturday morning, I woke up early and went for a run, trying to burn off some of the nervous energy. The January air was crisp and cold, perfect for clearing my head. I ran past the elementary school where I taught, past the small cafe where Maria and I had lunch, past all the places that made up my small but meaningful life. Tonight, that life would get a little bigger, a little brighter. I spent the afternoon preparing, taking my time with each step. A long bath with the expensive bath salts I saved for special occasions. Careful makeup application, not too much, but enough to look polished. The green dress fit perfectly, hugging in all the right places, while still being appropriate for a family dinner. By 5:30, I was completely ready. The drive to Mom's house would take 45 minutes without traffic, maybe an hour with it. I wanted to arrive exactly at 7, not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to be rude. I checked my reflection one last time before leaving my apartment. The woman looking back at me looked hopeful, expectant, ready for something wonderful to happen. I should have known better. Hope was a dangerous thing in the Harrison family. The drive to Mom's house started smoothly enough. I'd made this journey hundreds of times over the years, could navigate it with my eyes closed. Past the strip mall where Emma had gotten her ears pierced. Past the high school where Jason had been quarterback for exactly one game before deciding sports weren't for him. Past all the landmarks of a childhood, where I was always the observer, never the main event. Traffic hit about 20 minutes into the drive. Construction on Route 9 that hadn't been there last week, narrowing 3 lanes down to 1. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, watching the clock on my dashboard tick past 6:30, then 6:45. I sent a quick text at a red light letting Mom know I was running late. No response, but Mom wasn't great with texting anyway. She probably hadn't even heard her phone. By the time I finally pulled into her subdivision, it was 7:20. Not terribly late, but late enough that anxiety was pooling in my stomach. Mom hated tardiness, considered it a personal insult. But surely she'd understand about the traffic. Surely on my birthday she'd give me grace. The first thing I noticed was the cars. Emma's white Mercedes, pristine as always, parked in its usual spot closest to the front door. Jason's Tesla, the one he'd bought to celebrate his latest business success, angled perfectly beside it. But there were three other cars I didn't recognize: a BMW, a Range Rover, and an Audi that looked fresh from the dealership. My stomach tightened. Just the four of us, Mom had said. Just family. I parked my 10-year-old Honda at the end of the driveway, suddenly self-conscious about its faded paint and the crack in the windshield I'd been meaning to fix. The walk to the front door felt longer than usual, my new heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown. The house was lit up like Christmas, every window glowing warm and yellow. Through the dining room window, I could see movement shadows of people already gathered. The sound of laughter drifted out bright and cheerful, the sound of a party in full swing. I didn't knock. This was still technically my childhood home, even if it had never quite felt like it. The front door opened into a foyer that Mom had redecorated 3 times since I'd moved out, each iteration more sophisticated than the last. Currently, it was all white marble and abstract art, cold and impressive. The laughter was louder inside, coming from the dining room, along with the clink of glasses and silverware. Not dinner silverware. Dessert forks. I knew the sound from years of family dinners, could distinguish between the heavy dinner forks and the delicate dessert ones Mom only brought out for the final course. I stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene before anyone noticed me. The dining room table was set for 10, not 4. Mom was at the head, resplendent in the purple dress she wore for special occasions. Emma sat at her right, gesturing animatedly with a fork that had a piece of something chocolate on it. Jason was at the other end, his phone propped up against a water glass, apparently on a video call. But it was the center of the table that made my breath catch. The cake, my cake, the 3-layer chocolate cake from the Belgian bakery that cost $75 and had to be ordered 3 days in advance. It had been cut into several slices already missing. The candles, 34 of them, if Mom had gotten it right, were still there, but blown out wisps of smoke long since dissipated. The happy birthday. Abigail, written in elegant script, was partially obscured by a knife mark. The 3 strangers were seated between my siblings, 2 men and a woman, all in business attire, that suggested they'd come straight from the office. They were eating my cake, laughing at something Jason was saying, completely at ease in what was supposed to be my birthday dinner. Mom noticed me first. She looked up, her face shifting from laughter to surprise to something that might have been annoyance. "Oh, honey, you're finally here." She stood but didn't come to greet me. "We started without you. You know how I hate to hold dinner." I stepped into the room, aware that everyone was now looking at me. Emma barely glanced up from her dessert. Jason waved, but immediately returned to his video call. The 3 strangers assessed me with polite disinterest, the kind of look you give someone who's interrupted something important. We waited until 7:15. Mom continued settling back into her chair. But everyone was hungry, and we couldn't let the food get cold. The food. The dinner I was supposed to be eating. I could see the remnants on the plate stacked at the side of the table. Chicken bones that suggested piccata. The remains of roasted vegetables. Salad plates with wilted greens clinging to the edges. Emma finally acknowledged my presence. "There's cake left," she said, as if offering me leftovers from my own birthday celebration was generous. "Mom got your favorite." I stood there in my new green dress, the one Mom had never complimented, staring at the destruction of what was supposed to be my special dinner. There wasn't even a place set for me at the table. 10 chairs, 10 place settings, and not one of them waiting for the birthday girl. "Let me get you a chair from the kitchen," Mom said, already half rising. I found my voice finally. "Who are these people?" "Oh," Jason said, finally looking up from his phone. "These are my potential investors. Mom thought it would be nice to combine the meetings. Kill 2 birds, kill 2 birds. My birthday and his business meeting." Of course. One of the men, the older one with silver hair and an expensive watch, extended his hand toward me. "You must be the teacher's sister," he said, his tone suggesting he'd heard about me already. "That must be nice working with children. Very noble." Noble. Not impressive or successful or noteworthy. Noble the way you describe volunteer work or charity. "Someone has to do the simple jobs," Emma added, cutting herself another slice of cake. "Not everyone can handle corporate pressure." I watched her take the slice, noticed how she skipped over me entirely to offer it to the woman I didn't know. The woman accepted with a laugh, complimenting the cake's richness. My birthday cake's richness. We thought you weren't coming, Mom said, and there was accusation in her voice. You're always so busy with your little students. I tried to call. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls. The text I'd sent about traffic sat delivered but unread. Did you sing happy birthday? I asked, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. Oh, yes, Mom said brightly. Emma led it beautifully. You know how she has that lovely singing voice? We even did harmonies. Harmonies. They'd done harmonies for my birthday song, without me. I looked around the table searching for any sign of wrapped presents cards, anything that suggested this was actually a birthday celebration, and not just another family dinner where I happened to be mentioned. There was nothing for me, but I could see a small stack of business cards and what looked like contracts near Jason's seat gifts for his potential investors, apparently. The woman stranger was asking Emma about her latest case, something about corporate merger law that had everyone leaning in with interest. Mom was nodding along occasionally, adding commentary about how proud she was of Emma's success. Jason had returned to his video call apparently with someone in Paris based on his mentions of time zones. No one was talking to me. No one was even looking at me anymore. I stood in the doorway of my childhood dining room, dressed up for a birthday dinner that had happened without me, and I might as well have been invisible. Can we at least take a family photo? I asked, interrupting Emma's legal story. Mom glanced at the chandelier, considering. The lighting isn't good right now, honey. Maybe later after coffee. Later. Always later with me. Later we'll celebrate. Later we'll include you. Later will make you feel like you matter. I thought about all the family photos over the years, how I was always positioned on the edge, easy to crop out. How many times had I been cut from the frame entirely? How many times had Mom promised to take another photo, a better one, and never followed through? So you're the teacher, sister. The younger businessman was addressing me, his tone casual, but his eyes dismissive. That must be rewarding in its own way. Not financially, of course, but emotionally. I'm sure the children are grateful. The children. Not the education I provided, not the futures I was shaping, not the literacy I was building, just the children, like I was a babysitter with a degree. My phone buzzed in my purse, a text from Maria asking how the dinner was going, ending with a heart emoji, and remember you deserve to be celebrated. I looked at the message, then back at the table, at my mother who couldn't wait 20 minutes, at my sister who thought my career was simple, at my brother who hadn't even properly acknowledged my arrival, at the birthday cake that had been celebrated without the birthday girl. 34 years collapsed into this moment. Every overlooked achievement, every forgotten milestone, every time I'd been pushed to the edges of this family. And for what? For the privilege of eating leftover cake at my own birthday dinner. Something shifted inside me like a door finally closing on a room I'd been trying to air out for decades. The hope I'd carried into this house tonight didn't die dramatically. It just stopped like a clock that had finally run down. I looked at that half-eaten cake one more time, at the smeared frosting, and the blown-out candles, at the physical proof of where I stood in this family's priorities. They hadn't even saved me the first slice of my own birthday cake. I set my purse down on the side table with deliberate calm. The sound it made in the sudden silence seemed amplified like a gavel coming down. Everyone turned to look at me again, perhaps sensing something different in my posture, in the way I was standing straighter despite my whole world tilting. I'm leaving, I said, and my voice came out steady, clear, without a tremor. Mom's face went through several expressions in rapid succession, finally landing on exasperated disappointment. Don't be dramatic, Abigail, you just got here. At least have some cake. Dramatic. 34 years of being forgotten, overlooked, diminished, and standing up for myself once was dramatic. You're right, I said. And Emma looked up in surprise, because I never agreed with Mom that quickly. I did just get here, to my own birthday dinner, which apparently already happened. We couldn't wait forever, Mom said, her tone taking on that defensive edge I knew so well. Dinner was at 7, and I texted you that I was running late. Traffic on Route 9, well, I didn't see it, Mom said, though we both knew she had her phone beside her plate, face up, sound on. Let me ask you something, Mom. I moved further into the room not to sit, but to stand where everyone could see me clearly. In 34 years, how many of Emma's events have you postponed because I was running late? That's different, Emma interjected, setting down her dessert fork with a precise clink. My events are usually time sensitive, like my birthday. The one day a year that's specifically about me. That's not time sensitive enough. Jason finally put his phone down, perhaps sensing this was escalating beyond normal family dynamics. Come on, Abs, it's not that big a deal. There's still cake left. When did you get here, Jason? He shrugged. 6:30, maybe 6:45. So you were all early. But you couldn't wait an extra 20 minutes for the person this dinner was supposedly for. The three strangers were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. The woman whispered something to one of the men, probably asking if they should leave. But Mom held up a hand, a silent command for everyone to stay put. You're being oversensitive, Emma said, reverting to her favorite dismissal. As usual. Tell me, Emma, what did Mom get you for your 34th birthday? Emma blinked, caught off guard. What does that have to do with anything? Just tell me. She glanced at Mom, then back at me. The weekend spa trip to Nantucket. Right, the $5,000 spa weekend. And Jason, what did you get for your 28th birthday last year? Jason was looking genuinely uncomfortable now. The Rolex. But that was because I'd just closed the Morrison deal. A Rolex. I turned to Mom. And what did you get me for my birthday today? Mom's mouth opened, then closed. The silence stretched out, filling the room like water drowning us all. You forgot, didn't you? You were so busy planning Jason's investor meeting that you forgot to get your middle daughter a birthday present. I didn't forget, Mom said, but her voice was weak. I thought we could go shopping together later this week. Later. There it was again, the word that defined my entire relationship with this family. Do you want to know what I got you all? I asked, walking to where I'd set my purse and pulling out the wrapped packages I'd brought. For you, Mom, a scarf from Bergdorf's, the one you pointed out last month. For you, Emma, a first edition of that legal thriller you mentioned. And Jason, an engraved business card holder for your new venture. I set each present on the table as I named it. They sat there like evidence in a trial proof of who remembered whom, who thought of whom, who cared enough to plan ahead. Abigail, Mom started. But I held up my hand. No. I've been quiet for 34 years. It's my turn to talk. Do you know what it's like to grow up in a family where your achievements are footnotes to everyone else's headlines? Where your career is dismissed as simple and noble, while everyone else's is celebrated as impressive and successful? You chose to be a teacher, Emma said, as if that explained everything. I chose to be a teacher, yes, and I'm damn good at it. I have a master's degree. I've won teaching awards. I've had parents specifically request me for their children. I've changed lives, Emma. But in this family, that means nothing because I don't make six figures or have a corner office. The investors were practically melting into their chairs, desperate to escape this family drama. One of them cleared his throat. Perhaps we should go, he suggested to Jason. No, I said, and my voice was firm. Stay. See the whole show. See how the Harrison family really operates. See how Jason's mother prioritizes his business meetings over her daughter's birthday. See what really matters in this house. You're embarrassing yourself, Emma said. But I could see uncertainty in her eyes now. No, Emma. I'm finally telling the truth. And the truth is embarrassing, but not for me. For all of you. When was the last time any of you asked about my life? My work? Hell, when was the last time any of you even remembered my birthday without Mom reminding you? More silence. Jason picked up his phone, then put it back down when I looked at him. I know I'm the forgotten middle child. I've always known it. But I kept hoping that someday, somehow, I'd matter as much as the lawyer and the entrepreneur. That my mother would introduce me with pride instead of that little dismissive she teaches elementary school. That my siblings would see value in what I do, even if it doesn't come with prestige or wealth. You're being unfair, Mom said. And now there were tears in her eyes, the manipulative kind I'd seen so many times before. I love all my children equally. Name one thing, I said, moving closer to her. One thing you've done specifically for me, not as an afterthought, not as a combination with someone else's celebration, not as a consolation prize. One thing that was just mine. Mom's mouth worked silently. She looked to Emma for help, to Jason for support, but they had nothing to offer, because we all knew the truth now laid bare in this dining room that had hosted so many family dinners, where I'd been a prop rather than a participant. Your silence says everything I said, and I was surprised to find I wasn't crying. I'd expected tears had prepared for them, but they weren't coming. Maybe you run out of tears for people who never really see you anyway. I picked up my purse, leaving the presents on the table. The cake, that half-eaten monument to my insignificance, sat between us like a barrier I was finally ready to stop trying to cross. That cake tells me exactly where I stand in this family, I said, looking at each of them in turn. I'm done begging for crumbs of attention, crumbs of affection, crumbs of respect. I'm done being the afterthought, the also-ran, the one you remember only when it's convenient. Abigail, please, Mom said. But I was already walking toward the door. She'll be back, I heard her tell Emma as I left the room. She always comes back. And that was the problem, wasn't it? I always came back. Always forgave. Always made excuses for them. Always accepted whatever little they offered and pretended it was enough. But not tonight. Not anymore. I walked through that cold marble foyer, past the abstract art that meant nothing, past the family photos where I was barely visible, past 34 years of accepting less than I deserved. My heels clicked against the floor with purpose, now not hesitation. The front door closed behind me with a quiet click, not a slam. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being done. The 3 cars belonging to Jason's investors were still there, gleaming under the porch lights. My Honda looked shabby in comparison, but it was mine, bought with my teacher's salary, paid off through my own hard work. It would take me away from here, and that made it more valuable than all their luxury vehicles combined. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, waiting for the wave of regret, the second thoughts, the guilt that always followed when I stood up to my family. But it didn't come. Instead, there was something else, relief, like I'd been holding my breath for 34 years and could finally exhale. My phone was buzzing with texts from Maria, but I didn't look at them yet. I needed this moment, this transition between who I'd been and who I was about to become. The woman in the rearview mirror looked different somehow, not older or younger, not prettier or plainer, just free. I started the car and drove away from my mother's house, from the family that couldn't see me, from the birthday dinner that had happened without me. In the distance, I could see the lights of the city, full of possibility, full of people who might actually value what I had to offer. I didn't go home. Home was a 1-bedroom apartment filled with grading to do and lessons to plan, reminders of the career my family dismissed. Instead, I drove to Maria's house, a tiny bungalow she'd bought 3 years ago in the Arts District. Her porch light was on, like she knew I'd be coming. She opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug that felt more like home than my mother's house ever had. They ate the cake without me, I said into her shoulder. Come in, she said. I have wine and tissues and an entire chocolate cake from that place you like, the Belgian bakery. You didn't. I did. Called them this afternoon. Had a feeling you might need it. We sat in her living room, warm and cluttered with books and art projects from her students. Everything my mother would call messy, but what I recognized as lived in, loved in. She poured me wine in a mug because all her wine glasses were in the dishwasher. And somehow that small imperfection was exactly right. I told her everything. The investors at my birthday dinner, the cake already cut, the harmonies in the birthday song I hadn't heard, the empty place at the table that hadn't been set for me. She listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my mug, her anger on my behalf simmering quietly. You left, she finally said when I finished. You actually left. I did. Good. She raised her mug in a toast. Here's to Abigail Harrison finally choosing herself. We ate cake at her kitchen table, the whole thing between us with 2 forks, no plates, no pretense. She lit a candle she found in her junk drawer, stuck it right in the middle of the cake, and sang happy birthday to me in her off-key voice that was more beautiful than any harmony my family could have produced. "Make a wish," she said. I closed my eyes, but for the first time in my life I couldn't think of anything to wish for from my family. So instead, I wished for the strength to stay away, to not go crawling back the next time Mom called, with half-hearted guilt trips disguised as apologies. My phone started ringing around 10, Mom, predictably. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again, 15 times in total before she gave up. She didn't leave a single message, which told me everything. If she had been truly sorry, truly concerned, she would have said so. But this was about control, about me disrupting her perfect family narrative by refusing to play my assigned role. Emma texted once, "You embarrassed Mom in front of Jason's investors." Not an apology. Not concern for my feelings. Just accusation and blame, as always. Jason sent nothing, which was actually an improvement over Emma. At least he wasn't pretending to care. I stayed at Maria's that night, sleeping in her guest room that doubled as an office. The next morning, Sunday, she made pancakes and we graded papers together, not talking about my family, just existing in comfortable companionship. Monday came, and with it my normal life. My second graders didn't care that my family had forgotten me. They ran to hug me when I walked in, eager to share their weekend stories. Lucy had lost another tooth. Marcus had learned to ride his bike without training wheels. Jennifer had read an entire chapter book by herself. "Miss Harrison, did you have a good birthday?" Lucy asked during morning circle. I did. I told her, and realized it wasn't a lie. The evening with Maria had been good. This morning with my students was good. The parts of my birthday that didn't involve my family had been very good indeed. That week I made a decision. I blocked the family group chat. I didn't block their individual numbers. I wasn't ready for that level of finality, but I muted them. Their messages could sit there unread while I figured out who I was without the constant reminder of my inadequacy in their eyes. The first few days were hard. Habit made me want to check my phone to see if maybe this time they'd realized what they'd done. But Maria had my back, distracting me with coffee dates and movie nights, reminding me that I was breaking a 34-year pattern and it would take time. By Thursday, Mom had called 43 times. I knew because my phone kept track even on mute. Emma had sent 12 texts, each more irritated than the last. Jason had finally stirred himself to send a single message, "Mom's really upset." Not, "How are you not? I'm sorry we hurt you." Just, "Mom's really upset," as if her feelings were the only ones that mattered. As if they'd ever been anything but the only ones that mattered. Friday afternoon, I had a revelation while teaching my students about patterns in mathematics. We were talking about how patterns repeat unless something interrupts them, changes them, breaks the cycle. I realized I had been the one maintaining the pattern with my family. By always coming back, always forgiving, always accepting less than I deserved, I had taught them that it was acceptable to treat me as an afterthought. That evening, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I Googled therapists in my area who specialized in family dynamics. I found Dr. Sarah Chen, whose profile talked about helping people establish boundaries with difficult families. I booked an appointment for the following week. The weekend arrived with an invitation to a colleague's birthday party. Jennifer taught 4th grade, and we'd always been friendly, but never close. When I showed up with a gift and a smile, she seemed genuinely delighted. "Abigail, I'm so glad you came. Usually you have family things on weekends." "Not anymore," I said, and it felt like a declaration of independence. The party was small but warm. Teachers and their partners, a few friends from outside education. People asked about my work with genuine interest. Jennifer's husband, a nurse, understood the exhaustion of caring for others. Her best friend, a social worker, commiserated about the lack of respect for helping professions. No one called my job simple. No one suggested I should be doing something more impressive. They saw value in what I did because they understood that shaping young minds was anything but simple. 2 weeks after the birthday disaster, Emma called while I was at school. I saw her name on my phone during lunch and let it ring. She called back immediately, then sent a text. "This is important." Everything was always important when Emma needed something. I waited until after school until I was home with a cup of tea, and my grading spread out on my coffee table before I listened to her voicemail. Abigail, this is ridiculous. I need your help with my wedding planning. You can't just disappear because you're having one of your sensitive moments. Call me back. Her wedding. Of course. Emma had gotten engaged 6 months ago to a partner at her firm, someone as ambitious and cold as she was. The wedding was planned for June, a society event that Mom had been orchestrating like a military campaign. I deleted the voicemail without calling back. She tried again the next day, this time leading with manipulation. I really wanted you to be my maid of honor, Abigail, but I need to know you're reliable. Maid of honor. The role she'd never mentioned until she needed something from me. I wondered who had dropped out, which friend had disappointed her, that she was now turning to her forgotten sister for help. I texted back just once, I'm not available for your wedding. Best wishes. The response was immediate and furious. A stream of messages about selfishness, about family obligations, about how I was hurting Mom with my childish behavior. I archived them all without reading past the first few words. Dr. Chen turned out to be exactly what I needed. A soft-spoken woman in her 50s who had her own history with family dysfunction. She didn't judge when I cried during our first session talking about the birthday cake. She didn't minimize my pain or tell me to be grateful for what I had. Your family has trained you to accept crumbs, she said during our third session, and you've trained them to only offer crumbs. Breaking this pattern will be uncomfortable for everyone, but that discomfort isn't your responsibility to manage. We worked on scripts for when they contacted me. Simple, clear statements that didn't leave room for argument. We practiced saying no without justifying or explaining. We talked about grief, because that's what it was, grieving the family I'd never had and never would have. 6 months passed. Spring arrived with its usual chaos at school state testing and field trips and end-of-year programs. My students flourished, and I threw myself into teaching with renewed energy now that I wasn't spending emotional bandwidth on my family's dismissiveness. I'd started dating Michael in March. He was a single father I'd met at the pottery class. I'd finally signed up for something I'd wanted to do for years, but never had because Sunday afternoons were reserved for family obligations that never materialized. His daughter Sophia was in third grade at my school, though not in my class. He was a graphic designer who worked from home, soft-spoken and attentive, in ways that initially made me suspicious. Surely there was a catch. Surely he would eventually tell me I was too much or not enough. But he didn't. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. He remembered things I mentioned in passing, like my favorite coffee order, or that I was nervous about the school's poetry contest I was organizing. When I finally told him about my family, he didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just said that sounded really painful and asked if I wanted to talk more or change the subject. The pottery class became my Sunday ritual. My hands in clay, creating something tangible, something that was entirely mine. I was terrible at first. My bowls lopsided and my vases collapsing. But the instructor, an elderly woman named B, was patient. Art isn't about perfection, she said one afternoon as I stared at another failed attempt. It's about the joy of creation. The process matters more than the product. I thought about that a lot. How my family only valued the product, the salary, the prestige, the social standing. They'd never understood that teaching was about process, about daily small victories, about watching understanding dawn in a child's eyes. Mom had stopped calling daily after the first month, but she still tried weekly. The voicemails evolved from angry to guilt-laden to pathetic. Your brother needs you. Your sister's wedding is coming. I'm not getting younger. You're breaking my heart. Each message was archived unheard after I recognized the pattern Dr. Chen had predicted. In May, I ran into Jason at a coffee shop downtown. He looked tired, older than his 29 years' stress written in the lines around his eyes. We stared at each other across the space, and I waited for the usual anxiety to hit. It didn't come. He approached tentatively. Abigail. Hi. Hello, Jason. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I had 20 minutes before I needed to be back at school, and Dr. Chen had said I could choose my interactions when I felt strong enough. I nodded toward a corner table. The business failed, he said without preamble. The one with the investors from your birthday dinner. They pulled out after Mom's behavior that night, said if that's how she treated family, they didn't want to be in business with us. I noticed the ES. Even his business failures were tied to Mom somehow. I'm sorry your business failed, I said, and meant it. I wasn't sorry about the investors seeing our dysfunction, but I took no pleasure in his professional disappointment. Mom blames you, he said, then quickly added. But I don't. I've been thinking a lot since you left, about how we treated you, how I treated you. This was new. Jason taking responsibility for anything was as rare as a solar eclipse. I should have said something that night. About the cake, about waiting for you, about all of it. I was so focused on impressing those investors that I didn't even think about how it would feel for you to walk in on your birthday party already over. It wasn't a party, I corrected. Parties include the guest of honor. He winced. Yeah, you're right. Listen, I know Emma and Mom are angry, but I understand why you left and why you've stayed away. But there was always a but with my family. But I miss you. You were the only one who ever actually asked about my life beyond the success stories. You're the only one who remembered my birthday every year, even when we forgot yours. I sat with that admission for a moment. You could have called, I finally said. Any time in the last 6 months you could have reached out just to check on me. I know. I was afraid you wouldn't answer. And Mom kept saying you'd come back on your own. She was wrong. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. He fidgeted with his coffee cup. The thing is, without you, their family dinners are brutal. It's just Emma and Mom trying to out-achieve each other while I sit there wondering how we became these people. You became exactly who Mom raised you to be, I said, not unkindly, but honestly. The golden children who could do no wrong, while I became the shadow who was expected to be grateful for any attention at all. That's fair. He stood to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, your students are lucky to have you. You're the only one in our family who actually makes a difference in people's lives. It was the closest to an apology I'd ever get from him, and more than I'd expected. I watched him leave, shoulders hunched against the May drizzle, and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. He was 29 years old, and still living his life for Mom's approval, still defining himself by her standards of success. Emma's wedding invitation arrived the next week, addressed to Ms. Abigail Harrison and guest, as if I were a distant relative or a business acquaintance. The irony of receiving a formal invitation to my sister's wedding after being told I was supposed to be maid of honor wasn't lost on me. I RSVP'd with a decline and sent a card with a modest check. Polite but distant, the way you'd handle an obligation to someone you used to know. The day of Emma's wedding in June, Maria and I took a road trip to the coast. We ate lobster rolls and walked on the beach and didn't talk about the family event I was missing. That evening, as I assumed Emma was having her first dance, I was sitting on Maria's deck watching the sunset, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Mom sent a single text that night. You broke your sister's heart by not coming. I didn't respond. Emma's heart, if she had one, was just fine. She'd probably filled my spot at the wedding party with someone more impressive, someone whose career she could brag about to the other guests. Thanksgiving approached with its usual landmine of family expectations. Mom started her campaign in October, sending messages about family traditions and how the holidays weren't the same without everyone together. I'd already made plans with Maria's family, who had embraced me like a long-lost relative. The day itself was everything my family dinners had never been. Warm, chaotic, genuinely inclusive. Maria's mother asked about my teaching with real interest. Her father wanted to hear about the poetry contest my students had won. Her younger brother, home from college, made everyone play board games that had us laughing until our sides hurt. No one sat at the head of the table because it was round. No one's achievements were more important than anyone else's. When Maria's mom brought out dessert, she made sure everyone got an equal slice of pie, such a small gesture that meant everything to someone who'd spent 34 years getting the leftover pieces. Christmas came with a similar campaign from Mom, but by then I was practiced at maintaining boundaries. I sent cards to each family member, generic ones, from a box signed simply Abigail. No presents, no long messages, just acknowledgement that they existed without invitation for further contact. January arrived, bringing with it my 35th birthday. I woke up to texts from Maria, from colleagues, from Michael, from parents of current and former students. People who actually knew when my birthday was without Facebook reminders or mom's prompting. Michael made breakfast pancakes with 35 candles stuck in them because he was ridiculous and wonderful. Sophia had made me a card at school full of glitter and drawings of books because she knew I loved reading. My students had secretly planned a party complete with handmade decorations and a cake that said "Best Teacher Ever" in wobbly frosting letters. That evening, Maria hosted a dinner party. Just 8 of us friends who'd become my chosen family over the past year. We ate too much pasta and drank too much wine and played charades badly. When they brought out the cake, everyone sang no harmonies but full of genuine affection. No one had eaten any of it before I arrived. No one suggested starting without me. No one acted like celebrating me was an inconvenience squeezed between more important events. As I blew out the candles, I thought about the woman who had walked into her mother's house a year ago, hopeful in a new green dress, believing things could change. She had been right in a way. Things had changed, just not in the way she'd expected. I'd learned that family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining toxic patterns for the sake of tradition. Family is about the people who show up, who wait for you, who save you the first slice of cake, because they understand that everyone deserves to be celebrated. A week after my birthday, I got a letter from Mom. An actual letter handwritten on her monogram stationery. It was 4 pages of manipulation disguised as reflection about how she'd done her best, how I was too sensitive, how I was punishing her for loving all her children equally. But there in the 3rd paragraph was a telling line: "I don't understand why you can't be happy with what we give you." What we give you. Not what you deserve or what you need, but what we give you, like affection, was a resource to be rationed. And I should be grateful for whatever portion they decided to spare. I kept the letter not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. On days when I wondered if I'd overreacted, if I should reach out and try again, I would read that line. What we give you. It told me everything about how my family saw me as a recipient of their charity, rather than an equal deserving of unconditional love. February brought unexpected news through the gossip network of mutual acquaintances. Mom was struggling. Without me there to be the family peacekeeper, the dysfunction had turned inward. Emma and Mom were barely speaking after some dispute about the wedding costs. Jason had moved to California for a fresh start, putting physical distance between himself and Mom's expectations. The family that had seemed so united in their dismissal of me was fracturing without their common target. I felt no satisfaction in this, just a sad recognition that our family dynamic had always been held together by having someone to look down on. Without me in that role, they'd turned on each other. Dr. Chen called this a predictable outcome. Dysfunctional systems need their scapegoats. When the scapegoat leaves, the system has to reorganize, and that's always painful for those who benefited from the original structure. 1 year and 3 months after the birthday dinner disaster, I was promoted to assistant principal at my school. The announcement came during a staff meeting, and the genuine applause from my colleagues filled my chest with warmth. This wasn't a simple job. This was leadership responsibility, the chance to shape not just individual students, but entire educational approaches. The local newspaper did a feature on me talking about my innovative teaching methods and my dedication to early childhood literacy. They took a photo of me surrounded by my students, all of us holding our favorite books. I looked happy in that photo, genuinely happy. Not the forced smile of family portraits where I was always half in shadow. I framed that article, hung it in my new office, right next to the crayon drawings from my students and the pottery bowl I'd finally managed to create without it collapsing. These were my achievements, my joy, my definition of success. Michael and I had been together for almost a year by then. We'd taken things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from different sources. But he'd shown up consistently, never making me feel like I was too much or not enough. When I got the promotion, he'd brought flowers to my classroom, embarrassing me in the best way in front of my students who giggled and made kissing sounds. Sophia had started calling me Miss Abby outside of school, a special nickname that made my heart squeeze. She'd asked me once why I never talked about my mom and dad like her father talked about his parents. Sometimes families love each other but aren't good for each other. I told her, hoping that was age appropriate enough, so we have to love them from far away. She thought about that, then said, like how I love sharks but don't swim with them. Exactly like that. I'd agreed, and she'd gone back to her homework satisfied with an explanation that had taken me 35 years to understand. In March, I received an email from Emma. Not a text or a call, but a formal email like I was a business contact. She was pregnant due in September and wanted to extend an olive branch. Those were her exact words, like she was doing me a favor by acknowledging my existence. She suggested we meet for coffee to discuss moving forward as a family. The old me would have jumped at this chance, would have cleared my schedule, and driven wherever she wanted to meet. The new me replied that I wished her well with her pregnancy, but wasn't interested in meeting. Her response was swift and harsh, accusing me of being unforgiving, petty, willing to deprive her child of an aunt over my sensitive feelings. She clearly hadn't changed, hadn't reflected, hadn't considered her role in our fractured relationship. She just wanted me back in my assigned position. Now that she needed something, a built-in babysitter probably, or at least someone to plan her baby shower, since she'd likely alienated her friends with her ambition and coldness. I didn't reply to that email, or the three that followed, each more accusatory than the last. Dr. Chen and I had talked about this, about how family members often reach out not because they miss you, but because they miss what you did for them. Emma didn't miss me, her sister. She missed the convenience of having someone who would always say yes, always help, always accept less than bare minimum in return. Summer arrived with its blessed break from school routine. Michael, Sophia, and I took a vacation to Maine, renting a cottage by the lake for a week. I taught Sophia to fish badly, both of us squealing when we actually caught something. Michael cooked our catches over the campfire, and we ate with our fingers, no formal place settings or assigned seats. One evening, as we sat watching fireflies, Sophia asleep with her head in my lap, Michael asked if I ever thought about having kids of my own. I have 26 kids every year, I said, but I knew what he meant. You'd be an amazing mother, he said. The way you are with Sophia, with your students. You have so much love to give. I thought about that as the fireflies danced. My family had made me doubt my capacity for love, had made me feel like my affection was worth less because it came with a teacher's salary instead of a lawyer's prestige. But Michael was right. I did have love to give. I'd just been giving it to the wrong people for too long. That night, as we tucked Sophia into her cabin bed, she murmured sleepily, "Love you, Miss Abby. Love you too, sweet girl." I whispered back and meant it with every cell in my body. August brought another attempt from Mom this time, through a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. She called to tell me Mom was having health issues. Nothing serious, but enough to make her reflect on her mortality and her relationships. She wanted to make things right before it was too late. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost insulting. Mom had played the health card before, usually when she wanted something, or when her control was slipping. I thanked my cousin for calling, but said my position hadn't changed. "You're going to regret this when she's gone," my cousin warned, parroting what I'm sure Mom had told her to say. Maybe I said, but I already regret the 34 years I spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I can live with the regret of protecting myself. I couldn't live with the regret of wasting more years on false hope. The first day of school in September came with its usual excitement and chaos. New students, new colleagues, new challenges in my role as assistant principal. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the purpose and meaning it gave me. Emma's baby was born that month, a boy she named Alexander. I heard through social media, saw the carefully curated photos of the perfect family she was creating. I sent a card and a savings bond, maintaining the polite distance that had become my standard. She didn't acknowledge either, but I hadn't expected her to. October arrived with a surprise. Jason showed up at my school, waiting in the parking lot after dismissal. He looked better than he had at the coffee shop, healthier, like California sunshine had been good for him. "I'm not here to ambush you," he said quickly when he saw my wary expression. "I'm in town for a conference and just wanted to see you." No agenda, no messages from Mom, nothing like that. We sat on a bench outside the school watching the last buses pull away. He told me about his new life, a smaller business, but one that was actually his, not tied to Mom's money or connections. He was in therapy too, working through what he called the golden child syndrome that had left him unable to handle failure or criticism. I realized something he said. "You were the lucky one. Being ignored meant you got to figure out who you really were. Emma and I were just reflections of what Mom wanted us to be. And now in our 30s, we don't know who we actually are." I'd never thought of it that way, but he had a point. My invisibility had been painful, but it had also been a kind of freedom. I'd chosen teaching because I loved it, not because it would impress Mom. I developed my own values, my own definition of success, my own sense of self. I'm proud of you, he said as he stood to leave. For walking away, for staying away, for building something real. Mom and Emma will never admit it, but you're the strongest one in our family. Coming from Jason, who'd barely acknowledged my existence for most of our lives, it meant something. Not enough to rebuild a relationship, but enough to give me a moment of peace about him. November brought the second Thanksgiving with Maria's family even warmer than the first, because now I wasn't a guest, but a regular. Her mother had assigned me dishes to bring real responsibilities that meant I was part of the family machinery, not just an observer. Michael and Sophia joined us this year, expanding the circle in a way that felt natural and right. Watching Sophia play with Maria's young nephews, seeing Michael help Maria's father with the turkey, feeling Maria's mother fuss over whether I was eating enough, it all felt like pieces clicking into place. This is what family is supposed to feel like, I thought, as Maria's brother started his annual tradition of making everyone say what they were thankful for, no exceptions, no eye-rolling allowed. When it was my turn, I said, I'm thankful for the family we choose and the family that chooses us back. Maria's mother reached over and squeezed my hand, understanding in that simple gesture everything I couldn't say about the family I'd left behind. As December rolled in, bringing with it the anniversary of that fateful birthday dinner, I realized something had shifted in me over the year. The anger had faded, replaced not with forgiveness, but with indifference. I no longer checked their social media. I no longer wondered what they were doing for holidays. I no longer felt that pull of obligation that had defined so many years of my life. My mother, sister, and brother had become what they'd always been in practice, but what I'd refused to acknowledge, strangers who happened to share my DNA. The grief of losing the family I'd never really had transformed into relief at no longer pretending. Dr. Chen called this acceptance the final stage of mourning a relationship. You can't heal from a wound you won't acknowledge, she said during what would be one of our last regular sessions. You've acknowledged it, treated it, and now it's scarring over. Scars remind us of what happened, but they don't have to hurt forever. On my 36th birthday, there was no card from my family, no perfunctory text, no last-minute guilt gift. And I was glad. Their silence was more honest than their previous half-hearted attempts at inclusion had ever been. Instead, my day was filled with people who actually wanted to celebrate me. Michael made breakfast again, this time with help from Sophia, who insisted on 36 candles even though they nearly set off the smoke alarm. My former students, now third graders, ambushed me in the hallway with handmade cards. The staff threw me a surprise party during lunch, complete with terrible singing, and a cake that everyone waited for me to cut. That evening, as Maria, Michael, Sophia, and I sat around my dining room table with a few other close friends, I thought about that other birthday dinner 2 years ago. The half-eaten cake, the empty chair, the final realization that I would never be enough for the people who should have loved me most. That cake had saved my life in a way. It had been the slap of reality I needed to stop accepting crumbs, to stop believing that if I just tried harder, achieved more, needed less, they would finally see me as worthy of their full attention and love. Make a wish, Sophia commanded as she brought out the cake she and Michael had made lopsided and covered in probably too much frosting. I looked around the table at these people who had shown up for me, who saw my worth, not in spite of my career, but because of it, who offered love freely without conditions or comparisons. I thought about the students whose lives I'd touched, the literacy programs I'd implemented, the difference I made every single day in my simple job. I closed my eyes and made my wish, though it wasn't really a wish anymore, but a prayer of gratitude. Thank you for the half-eaten cake that set me free. Thank you for the empty place at that table that pushed me to find tables where I was welcomed. Thank you for the family that couldn't love me the way I needed, because it forced me to find people who could. When I opened my eyes and blew out the candles, everyone cheered. Michael kissed my temple. Sophia clapped with delight. Maria raised her wine glass in a toast. To Abigail, she said, who teaches us all. That sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. We ate the entire cake that night, every last crumb, because that's what you do when you're with people who believe you deserve the whole thing, not just whatever's left over. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, told stories that had nothing to do with achievements or success metrics, played board games that Sophia changed the rules to whenever she was losing. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Maria pulled me aside. "You know what the difference is?" she asked, "between this birthday and that one. What that one was about them, even though it was supposed to be your day. This one is actually about you. The real you, not the role you played in their dysfunction." She was right, as she usually was. For 34 years, I'd celebrated my birthday by trying to make my family comfortable with acknowledging my existence. Now I celebrated by surrounding myself with people who were comfortable with my joy. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up, I found myself standing in my kitchen holding a knife to cut one last sliver of cake that had been overlooked. I paused, remembering another cake, another knife, another moment that had changed everything. But this time, I was the one holding the knife. I was the one deciding how much I deserved, and I deserved it all. Every single crumb, every single layer, every single moment of sweetness this life had to offer. I put the knife down and ate that last piece with my fingers standing at my kitchen counter, in my small but lovely apartment, in my simple but meaningful life, surrounded by the ghost of love that was real and present and mine. The woman who had walked into her mother's house 2 years ago in a green dress desperate for recognition would barely recognize the woman standing in this kitchen. That woman had believed her worth was determined by her family's validation. This woman knew her worth existed independently of anyone's recognition, but her own. My phone sat silent on the counter, no longer a source of anxiety about who might or might not call. The family that had raised me to accept less than I deserved had given me one last gift without meaning to. They had shown me exactly what I didn't want my life to be. I was Abigail Harrison, 36 years old, assistant principal, teacher, partner, potential stepmother, friend, pottery enthusiast, terrible but enthusiastic fisher, good at my job, great with children, worthy of being celebrated, of being waited for, of getting the first slice of cake at my own birthday party. The people who couldn't see that, who chose not to see that, were the ones who had lost something precious. Not me. Never again me. As I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed, I thought about what I'd tell my students tomorrow when they asked about my birthday. I'd tell them it was perfect, that everyone who mattered was there, that the cake was delicious and everyone waited to eat it together, that birthdays are about celebrating with people who truly see you and love you for exactly who you are. I wouldn't tell them about the birthday 2 years ago. That story wasn't for them. But someday when they were older, if they ever felt invisible or forgotten or less than, I'd be there to tell them what I'd learned, that sometimes the best thing that can happen is for people to show you exactly where you stand with them. Because only then can you choose to stand somewhere else, somewhere better, somewhere you're valued not for what you achieve, but for who you are. That half-eaten cake hadn't been a tragedy. It had been a revelation. It had shown me that I'd been sitting at the wrong table my whole life, begging for scraps of affection from people who didn't have any to spare, at least not for me. Now I sat at tables where there was always room, always enough, always celebration without conditions, where cakes were eaten together or not at all, where being a teacher was noble and important and worthy of respect, where my existence wasn't an afterthought but a priority. The Harrison family had taught me one valuable lesson in the end, though not the one they'd intended. They taught me that family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining toxic patterns for tradition's sake. Family is about choice. It's about showing up. It's about waiting for everyone to arrive before starting the celebration. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to leave the table where you're not valued and find the places where you're treasured. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is absence from spaces where your presence is ignored. Sometimes you have to eat the half-eaten cake of realization and use it as fuel to find tables where you'll always, always get the first slice. That night I dreamed not of the family I'd lost, but of the family I'd found. And for the first time in 36 years, I woke up on the day after my birthday feeling whole. Not because I'd finally gotten what I'd always wanted from my biological family, but because I'd finally stopped wanting it. And in that letting go, in that release of hope for something that would never come, I'd found something better. I'd found home. The end. What would you do if your own family forgot you at your birthday dinner? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your worth and building the family you deserve. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they deserve more than crumbs, more than leftovers, more than half-eaten cake. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you deserve to be celebrated, to be waited for, to get the first slice of your own birthday cake. Until next time, this is Abigail reminding you that sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to leave tables where you're not valued and find the ones where you're treasured.